Hi, this is Diana Oxley. I'm with the Northwest Regional Educational Laboratory in Portland, Oregon. And I am speaking with Mr. Stephen Dutch, principal of Hillcrest High School in Queens, New York. How are you doing, Steve?
Fine.
I'm really glad that you could join us to tell us about the dramatic reforms that you've made at Hillcrest High School. You've been principal there 13 years, is that right?
That's correct. I've been here since September of 1996.
Okay, so I can imagine that your long tenure there maybe has something to do with the, the success of the reforms that you've been able to make there. I want to start out by asking you about, the high school in general. Just if it would be really helpful if you could kind of paint a picture for us of, just the major distinguishing features of Hillcrest. And, give us the big picture to start.
Well, Hillcrest is a large school. We have 3,400 students in the school. And what we've done in the last 3 years is divide ourselves into 9 small learning communities, 7 of which are 4-year career-bound programs and 2 of which are 1-year immersion programs. Prior to the transformation, though, we were one large school. We had basically zoned the students that live in the borough or the county of Queens. Queens is the most ethnically diverse county in the United States, and Hillcrest really represents the variety of students that are found in Queens. Our student population is about 45% African American, about half of those students tracing their roots to the American South, and the other half tracing their roots to the Caribbean or recent immigrants from Africa. Our school is about 22% Hispanic, students coming from Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, and Central American countries. 29% Asian, basically from South Asia, from Bangladesh, Guyana, Pakistan, India. About 2% white. About 79% of our students are entitled to free lunch. And we have about 5% of our students that do have IEPs and about 12% of our students that are ESL learners.
Okay, thank you. So this is a very large high school, over 3,000 students. And I understand you've got a number of departments there, too. Do you have a slide that shows us the structure of the departments in your high school?
Prior to the transformation, Hillcrest was really just like many large schools. There was a principal at the top of the pyramid, and there were assistant principals or department chairs that were in charge of a variety of different subjects, from English to ESL, security and safety, and to guidance. And basically, they dealt with their own department within the school framework. But there was very little interaction amongst teachers from different departments and very little structured opportunities for teachers from different departments to be able to work collaboratively with each other, and very little opportunities actually for assistant principals to work collaboratively with each other. What we began to decide to do was, at the time that we began to make our transformation, approximately 55% of our students were completing school within 4 years. While we were considerably above the New York City standard and above the New York State standard, we felt quite alarmed that over 40% of our students were taking more than 4 years to be able to complete high school. And that was really the impetus for us moving to small learning communities. It was the belief that by creating nested small learning communities within the school, we would be able to create opportunities for students to make connections with teachers and to personalize instruction. So I'm going to flip to a slide now that really shows, well, sorry.
It's all right.
Okay, one more try. There we go. And this is the structure that we actually came up with. And if you notice in this slide, you have 7 4-year small learning communities: pre-med, health, careers, theater, humanities, teaching, biz tech, public service, and law. Each of those SLCs have approximately 450 students. They have their own teaching staff, their own teacher, director, or a team of teacher, director, and co-directors and guidance counselor, and their own space within our vast building. During the transformation phase, which took us 6 months, we reallocated space throughout the building and did a wall-to-wall transformation in September of 2006, using the period of time from February 2006 to September 2006 as the opportunity to restructure our school. We also created 2 immersion programs, one for incoming 9th graders and one for students who are new to the country. The incoming 9th grader program, which we call the Future Academy, targeted at-risk students that were coming into the school. Our average entry class is approximately 850 9th graders. And in Future Academy, we captured approximately 100 of the most struggling incoming 9th graders and provided them with additional support, interventions, their own space, their own guidance counselor, so they can make a more satisfactory transition from the middle school to high school experience. And the other one-year immersion program was Newcomers Prep. And in Newcomers, there were 2 tracks as well, one for English as a second language and one for students who American English was a second dialect. We have a significant population that comes to us from English-speaking countries such as Jamaica or Guyana or some of the African nations, where students are taught in English in that country, but they come to us in high school delayed in both writing and reading of American English and would not be successful if we placed them into a regular academic classroom. So this one-year immersion program provides some additional support. If you look at this chart in a little bit more depth, what you will see is that a student and a teacher really is provided with support in 2 directions. If we look vertically, they're getting support from the guidance counselor and the director or director co-director. And horizontally, the assistant principal supervisions, or the department chairs, which we now call academic and learning specialists, provide academic support to the teachers across the 9 small learning communities. The only central operations in the school are the facilities management, budget, and safety and security, and the analysis of data. So essentially, you move to a structure from what I had shown you a couple of slides back, where we looked like this, to a slide like this, where we are now, that students is at the center of all operations, and that we support each other, whether we're science teachers or global teachers or directors or counselors, and it all is much more circular in the way we provide supports and intervention.
Okay, the global teachers, is that social science?
Social studies, yes.
Okay, good. All right, and the 2 transitional academies that you've that are just one-year academies, is that right? Students don't stay more than a year in each of those?
We made a decision as to when we made this transformation that we were going to be doing a wall-to-wall transition. And what we decided to do was that for the 9th grade, we'd be able to provide support to our incoming 9th graders, but they needed to be embedded into a nested community as soon as possible. As a matter of fact, for next September, we are beginning to phase out the freshman aspect of the Future Academy, because what we have seen is that students really adjust better to being into one of the 4-year communities upon entry into the school. And the Future Academy began at Hillcrest 1 year prior to the total transformation. What we've seen in the total transformation is the fact that there are so many services within the small learning community that small nested community for incoming 9th graders is not as paramount as it was in the past. What we have begun to do is, at the end of 3 years of high school, begin to look at students who are struggling in this small learning community and possibly would not make high school graduation within the traditional 4 years. And we've added a component to the Future Academy, which we now call the Senior Academy component, in which seniors in their 4th year of high school are provided additional opportunities to accumulate credits while they're in school that they would not normally accumulate if they were taking traditional classes. We're doing a lot of online credit recovery. We're doing significant independent study packages using New York City as the classroom, and different types of concurrent option programs so that students who have faltered during their first 3 years of school have the opportunities to amass significant credit in that 4th year of school and graduate on time with their peers.
Interesting. Let me see if I've got that right. So that Future Academy that you had originally organized as an academy that provides intensive support for students at risk of failing in the 9th grade, that you've shifted a bit away from that. More of those students that seem at risk of failing are being included. You see them as receiving enough support in the regular so-called small learning communities that they can go directly into those. But on the other hand, you're seeing that as some students approach graduation, they look to be off track. It appears that maybe they'll become overage, and you are shifting them into this more intensive support environment. Is that right?
That's correct. I think what we've also gotten better is at the work that we're doing with adults. I think when we look back to 2006, our adult staff in the building were not necessarily equipped to be able to deal with struggling students at the same level that they're able to deal with them at this point. So in the creation of the Future Academy, when that was first initiated during the 2005-2006 school year, it was that unique bunch of teachers that were really able to really work with kids who were coming into high school and struggling. But as we've been able to have the opportunity to do much more in-depth work with our teachers professionally over the last few years, as a result of having the small learning communities and common planning time, there are more adults in the building who have the capacity to work with struggling students, so that work can be done now within a small learning community by their abilities to differentiate in that community. Also, the school has raised the bar to the expectation that high school is only 4 years, and that somewhere during the third year we need to begin to evaluate the success or failure that a student has made during the first 3 years. And again, since we've been moved into smaller groups of students, it's much easier to manage the data and to be able to make decisions on subgroups of students and ensure that they can graduate within a 4-year period of time. So I think
that's just extremely interesting. I think people will hear this with great interest. So what I'm hearing, at least, is that you were able to make some structural changes, some reorganizational changes quite quickly here, but it takes a few years really to build teachers' capacity within these small learning communities to really be able to support kids who are, functioning at very different levels in terms of readiness to do ninth grade work. That takes a while, and as they built their capacity, then you were able they were able to handle more of these kids who you might have originally thought couldn't survive in those small learning communities.
Yes, Diana, that's absolutely correct. What we've begun to see is that through additional opportunities for professional development that the small learning community has afforded us, we can build a capacity of teachers. And I mention that because as we structure this, each of our teachers have 10 periods a week in which they have available to themselves for common planning time. In New York City, the average teacher teaches 5 instructional classes a day. They have a duty-free lunch. They have a preparation period and an administrative period. What we've done is we've made sure that all of the teachers in each SLC have a common preparation period and have a common administrative period. And that's been done by allowing the students within a small learning community to have their lunch period together and their physical education period together. And as a result of that, the academic teachers are free 10 periods a week together, 5 periods of which we structure during common planning time, and the other 5 periods a week in which they can work independently with each other. This has also really caused them to begin to work across curricular areas. Prior to the transformation, when we were in a departmentalized structure, teachers rarely had the opportunity to work with colleagues from different subject areas. Now that we're nested within small learning communities, groups of 15 to 20 teachers have the opportunity to work together with each other almost on a daily basis.
Okay. And what about other programs besides the small learning communities? Are there other services and programs that you offer school-wide?
Yes. We are, as I mentioned, we are organized into the 9 small learning communities. We're very happy to say that we've really created a very strong college-oriented school. Last year, out of cohort 2008, over 75% of the students that entered 4 years earlier graduated on time. Of that 75%, 98% of those students entered college this past September, 85% of them attending four-year colleges. We've also been able to maintain a full art, music, and dance program, which is very rare for a small school to be able to offer. But since we still are one large school, the opportunities for those types of selectives can still be included in the student's program. And in each of our SLCs, there's different specialties. For example, in our BizTech program, there is the Virtual Enterprise Business Simulation program, the Cisco Technology Center. We have maintained offering 5 different languages within the school: Spanish, French, Latin, Arabic, and Bengali, with Arabic and Bengali being offered campus-wide and the other 3 languages being offered within specific SLCs. We offer over 12 advanced placement classes campus-wide and over 19 different college-accredited classes that are offered campus-wide as well. Plus, there are a variety of clubs and teams within the school that small schools cannot provide students, but a large comprehensive high school structure can. So there are many campus-wide activities, yet there are real structured activities for each small learning community.
Okay, so what I heard there was that you've created a bit of a compromise here in that you're able to offer many electives, but only some of them are available school-wide. In other words, kids in any of the small learning communities could take those electives. But for others, they do have to, your ability to have that elective is dependent on your being in a particular SLC.
That's correct. In New York State, there are specific requirements on the high school level. Every student must have 4 years of English, 4 years of social studies, 4 years of health and physical education, 3 years of math, 3 years of science, 1 year of a foreign language, and a combination of 1 year of art, music, or a full year of art or a full year of music. So that affords a student with an opportunity to really be taking approximately 1 to 2 electives each semester. And what we've done in developing the SLCs is earmarking the electives that are offered within that SLC to meet the theme of that SLC. And students within that small learning community have priority seating in those classes. If there are extra seats available in the class, then it is offered on a campus-wide basis. But essentially, it's that a student is selecting a specific major when they're entering the school. And through the Office of High School Enrollment in New York City, students have the opportunity to apply directly into one of the 7 4-year small learning communities when they're applying to attend Hillcrest High School.
Okay, so given those pretty substantial state graduation requirements, students' program, the lion's share of their program is really meeting those requirements. And electives are a pretty minor or peripheral part of their academic program. They only get 1 or 2 per semester. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, good. Do you have some data that you can share that give us an idea of, the seriousness of the challenge that you faced and probably served as a primary impetus for making these reforms?
As you can see in the chart that's on display now, if we make a 10-year comparison and we look at English, for example, in the fall of 2008, nearly 85% of the students that were taking English passed their class. 10 years prior to that, only 61.5% of the students that took English passed. And you can see as an overall summary, the school has really built its capacity for students in accumulating credits, that there's approximately a 17% increase over the last 10 years. Now, the benefit of that really has happened, I would say, by the depersonalization that now takes place between the student and the teacher, and the accountability that's now been placed on the teacher to ensure that the student succeeds. When I first came to the school, students could have as many, at a minimum, as many of 8 different English teachers during their career at Hillcrest High School, because we were on a semester basis, so the teacher that you had for the fall semester would be different than the teacher you had for the spring semester, and there was a whole reorganization between the 2-semester period. About 2 years prior to the transformation to small learning communities, we became an annualized school in which the teacher that the student had in September was the teacher that the student had in June. So we reduced greatly the number of teachers that a student would have in a specific academic class, therefore really creating a level of personalization. In moving to the small learning community model, there's a greater opportunity for students to have less than 3 or 4 teachers in a specific subject area over their lifetime at high school. So teachers get to know students considerably better. They get to know the students' strengths and weaknesses. Students begin to know their teachers much better and have a much greater sense of community within the school. And one of the things that we've seen really that's very positive about the entire small learning community movement, and certainly one of the things that have been successful about the small school movement, is the fact of personalization between an adult and a student. That has been one of the success points that small schools have really been able to identify, that kids really make a connection with another adult in the building. In this model of moving to small learning communities, that same thing is really able to happen because students have begun to know their teachers quite well, and teachers are there understanding their students' needs. Also, the entire transformation of the use of the guidance counselor has really made a marked difference in how we support students in the school. Our building was built in the early 70s, and as many high schools built in the early 70s or earlier, there was a large guidance suite in which counselors were lined up next to each other, and their offices adjoined each other, probably with a conference room on the first floor of the building. And the academic classes were in other parts of the building. And all meaningful discussions about students were often mediated between the student initiating the discussion. Guidance counselors, for the most part, did not really have the opportunity to work collaboratively with the academic teachers. In the transformation that we came up with, the guidance counselors are now embedded within the small learning community and are part of the common planning time each day. So that focus and that interpersonalization has really been another step that has caused marked student increase in performance.
Okay, Steve, this is very dramatic, these findings over 10 years, and on average an increase in passing rate by over 15%. That is really dramatic. And what I'm hearing you say, how you account for this is that through this greater personalization, that students are becoming attached to an adult that they can look to for support. I'm wondering, too, it sounds as if in your reorganization that there's just a lot less change going on in that first year, too. I mean, it goes along with the personalization, but what I'm hearing you say is that these students are experiencing less switching from one teacher to another, and so that gives teachers more opportunity to build on their knowledge of kids and to provide some continuity of support. That would be true of guidance counselors as well. Can you comment on that? Does that seem right, or is it mainly what you're saying, that it's really about this ability of teachers and students to get to know one another and really kind of make an attachment, so to speak?
Well, you're hitting it on the head. If you look at the guidance piece, prior to the transformation, students were programmed with the guidance counselor in alphabetical order, and guidance counselors could change from one year to the next as to who was servicing a group of students. And our counselors still have a relatively large caseload of around 400 to 450 students each, but their counseling caseload remains stable. They meet with the kids when they come in the 9th grade, and they're going to be their counselor for the 4 years that they're in school. So they get to know the student in a much better way than they did prior, where there would be a change in who your guidance counselor was every year. As far as teachers go, one could really say that there was automatically, along with the personalization, a level of accountability that was built into it. Prior to this, it would be very easy for a spring semester teacher to say that his or her students were not performing well because of the work that was done by the teacher in the fall semester. Now, with one teacher teaching an entire course, the accountability of how the students are performing in the class are even greater. And with the introduction of looping of classes from 9th to 10th grade and 11th to 12th, there's also a greater accountability on the teacher and making sure that the students succeed within the class. And we have become much more data savvy over the last few years to be able to track individual teachers' performance and individual students' performance. And now that we're working within small learning communities to granulate the services that we're providing to meet the needs of all of the students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just sounds as if you've created some communities of teachers and students that where there's more stability, more continuity, less chaos even. Do you see some differences in just the overall environment of the school? It's so large. Does it seem, what are the differences there in terms of just the general climate of the school?
Yes, the tone in the building has dramatically increased towards the positive. Students really have a connection within the school. As a matter of fact, last week we held our 3rd annual battle of the SLCs, in which different SLCs competed with each other on all different types of camp sport type activities. There has really become a connection that students have a sense of pride, not only in attending Hillcrest High School, but being part of a specific small learning community. Students have a much better relationship with teachers. Teachers are much more comfortable with the students, as opposed to a dozen years ago where we had a significant number of teachers leave at the end of every year, leaving to go to the suburbs. That has almost dried up entirely. That our teachers are very happy working with our students and feel a great sense of contentment and satisfaction with the work that they're doing here now. And every day become more and more involved in different activities to make Hillcrest a very student-centered place. Okay.
Steve, thank you very much. You've done a really nice job of painting the picture of Hillcrest, both as it was, 10 years ago and what it has become today. So thank you very much for sharing all of this information. Nice talking with you.
Thank you.